how do you learn from each other? And now this is something I think the AI and LLM world is trying to solve, like how do you upskill and learn as a team together at the same time?
Alper Yurder. Alper is a founder. He is a fractional CMO, a fractional CRO, and an advisor to startups, founders, and enterprise companies.
There is a huge lack of marketing muscle in salespeople, including myself, which I was. The base of sales is trust, and you need to build trust. So if your marketing doesn't do all the work of educating people, your job on the first call is to build that trust in 30 minutes while you're running a discovery, which is impossible. The best way to build the trust is to be curious about the person and their problem.
What is the current go-to AI tool that you're finding yourself using on a day-to-day basis at the moment?
Oh, straight in. Well, I mean,
straight in.
Not just day to day, it's 24/7, unfortunately. Claude.
Yeah. Which aspect of it are you finding yourself sort of using? All of it.
Well, the thing is, it's crazy. Last year it was ChatGPT, now it's Claude, and then there's Claude, and you just as you build your projects and stuff, then there's Claude Code and Claude Skills and co-work, and you're trying to catch up. A few months ago it was Gemini because we were doing a lot of content work, and we were just fascinated by its capabilities about building, designing things, etc. Now it's Claude, and then I use a whole bunch of, because I'm involved with a lot of startups, everyone's sending their tools to me, so I'm trying to figure out, like, is this useful? Is this really a specific tool, or is it just like an add-on on an AI? So I see a lot, but Claude beats everything right now. Unfortunately, it's my everything right now. Yeah.
An interesting conversation that I've been having with a lot of people on the podcast is this idea of, and you've kind of just touched on it there, that there's so many tools out there and there's so many people sending them in and try this. And I think there's a lot of companies that are A, getting quite overwhelmed with that, and B, if they are using it, they're using it in a very shallow way. So they're not necessarily going in deep on 1 to 5 tools. They're perhaps having 20 tools, but not actually really utilizing them. How do you think companies can kind of stop, navigating it in that way and being really shallow with it and actually kind of use it to implement and help their, go-to-market strategy in a bit of a deeper way? Is this kind of something that you've come across, and what can companies do to sort of stop themselves doing that?
Yeah, I mean, so I've built a growth advisory last year, and I work with a lot of startups, and I've probably seen over 100 startups between seed stage to Series B across this time span. So each their own, one size fits no one. But one language I would change, for example, rather than saying how does a company use something, is at the end of the day, it's the person who uses it. So for example, in B2B, we talk a lot ICP, company level, etc. And given I've done both sales and marketing, and I'm more in the growth side of things right now, I look at things from the persona point of view. Is there a person, a persona, a human being who is in charge of something and who is making things happen? Because at the end of the day, when you say, how does a company approach it? That is where the problem, because the company shouldn't be approaching it. There should be one person, one owner who should be approaching it. And that should be somebody who can spare the time, energy, and focus on building the tool stack around the go-to-market strategy, whether it's a RevOps person, growth person, go-to-market engineer, whatever you call. But this is where the problem starts. If everyone is trying things and trying to figure out things simultaneously in their own little corners and silos, I think it creates a lot of noise. Whereas if you can make a person the owner of figuring this out and sort of not just bombard them with things like, oh, I've seen this, that, but like be mindful about what you share with them and expect them to have ownership and check it out and report back to you. I think that's kind of the one owner, execution rigor, ownership over making sure things are happening is really key there. Because otherwise, I did the same. Like in my Slack channel, I have a team of 5. In my Slack channel, for 6 months, I was getting lots of like, oh, look at this AI thing, this shiny thing on LinkedIn, this little new thing, blah, blah. And I was just bombarding it. At the end of the day, like we can only digest so much. So Who's looking at all this information? Through what lens? And what's the outcome of it? Because a lot of time we'll share these things, but don't then expect the outcome or don't chase the result. So I've shared this with you. What's happening? Is it really useful or not? So this kind of ownership and reporting is, I think, important to not get lost in the noise.
Who do you think it should be that should kind of be owning those tools? Because again, through the conversations I've had, there's been this discussion of the kind of decision makers, the gatekeepers within a company, I guess like those sort of top level executives, if we're thinking about enterprise size or even kind of smaller 50 employees, there's still people at the very top. Is it them that needs to be leading the charge on this? And do they need to be kind of finding the tools, or do they need to be delegating that to, say, a sales leader or someone within RevOps? Do you know what I mean? Like, where does that responsibility kind of land? Because, say, for example, I'm working for you. If I find a tool, maybe I don't feel like I can bring it to you and say, "Hey, Alper, we should kind of be using this." How does, I guess maybe the question I'm asking is, do these kind of leaders empower their team to feel like they can take that ownership over all these tools? Because everything's moving so fast, right? That people don't want to make mistakes. And obviously, whether we like it or not, people are also worried about their jobs. So they're like, do I show this AI tool that could potentially, I don't know, replace me,
Yeah. I think it depends a bit on the size of the team. As I said, like my background is very much enterprise sales and complex sales, large sales teams. I've built and managed large sales teams. I've built FlowLab, the digital sales platform for large sales, complex sales teams. But more recently, the last 5-6 years, I've been working mostly with pre-seed to Series A startups. So, the number of overall employees is a team of 50 or whatever. You'll have the founder who's taking care of a lot of things and then wants to outsource it to somebody. They will hire the first VP sales or CRO and whatever. And that person will come with their own ideas. One thing, when I was doing my podcast, one CRO said the biggest help, or what couldn't you live without, was the question I asked the CRO of a 600 people sales team. And he told me RevOps. Like, without the RevOps people, I wouldn't, survive through anything. And I trust my RevOps people the most, etc. And I've interviewed a lot of RevOps people in like big Gongs and HubSpots and whatever's. And obviously there, the power should lie with those people, right? Like, they are the ones who might start and end the conversation about what tools do we use. But the need should stem from something real, either bottom up or top down. Generally, it's top down in the companies that I work with, because it's a founder with a view who'll be like, I've seen this thing. Are we using this thing? Why aren't we using that thing, etc. And then again, as I say, like, if you can funnel that to, I don't know, if you have a team of 5 AEs and there's one girl who is the most tech savvy person, and if you can channel that to them, great. But this is a workflow in itself. And I think what's important is that somebody with curiosity, excitement, interest about these tools should have the ownership, should be given a certain level of information to digest over a week. And then the week after should be followed upon. What's the status? Have you been able to check it? Is it something really useful for us? Is it just hype? And then a little chat about it. And I think a small lean team can make things work in a lean way like that.
You mentioned there very briefly about, going in those kind of almost like 0 to 1 stage. And I know this is something you've said you've got a lot of experience with. What are those kind of things that need to be sort of systemized as a company starts to move out of founder-led sales, or sort of depending on that sort of first voice? What are those initial touch points that people need to really sort of think about?
Yeah, that's my bread and butter, and that's what I do every day, because I just love working with founders. I've been one. I love the co-founder level ownership. And there's a really nice slide that we've created at Forte that explains the whole system. I think, again, one size fits no one, but there's also patterns across every B2B organization that I keep seeing. So people will come to me with symptoms like, our reply rates are 4%, or I hired the marketing person, but he's doing a terrible job, or our sales cycles are very long. Do you think we should X, Y, Z? And the moment I start running a bit of a diagnostic, when we dive deeper into the questions, it's always a go-to-market essential problem. So, for example, I was talking to this VP sales last week of a DevOps AI tool where they're around 700K ARR, founder led through their network, but they're trying to expand beyond it. And it's all enterprise sales. And as we dig deeper, I understand you can only close so many enterprise people. The persona that you're trying to go after only listens to their peers, their word, to build trust, because the essence of sales is trust. So how as a marketing function you will build trust is really important. So if you're not present in the Reddit channels where people are talking about these tools, or if you're not being talked about in a private dinner, like you're missing out on something. All these things need to be kind of diagnosed and aired first, and then built into a plan. And the way I like to do it is very simple, 5 stages, super complex inside, but simple to understand. First, this is where we'll start. You do some outbound. And outbound isn't just sending like thousands of emails and spamming people and trying to figure out things, but it's more about understanding the voice of the customer, the persona, where do they hang out, how do they get their information, how do they move from awareness to interest, right? So first, you start some message market fit tests. You go on LinkedIn, you figure out your ICP, you send some messages, go to events, do some outbound, figure out what converts people along the funnel. As you start figuring that out, obviously you're booking meetings. Hopefully some of those leads are converting or not, but you're recording those calls. Your AI is learning from those calls, and you're iterating your messaging, the aha moments. This is something people don't capture enough. What are the aha moments in a call or in a conversation where people go, yeah, so you don't have to explain things for 30 minutes, right? So you do your message market fit. Then you scale your outbound, because obviously you need the volume. So you start doing a bit more. If it's outbound, you scale with your email. If it is writing blog content, you scale with your SEO. So you figure out a way to scale to the right people in the right way. Then you figure out the third point is trust. So what are your trust building activities? Are you creating content? Are you using the power of other influencers in your industry? Are you writing blogs? Are you going to focus on AEO, SEO, whatever it is? So how are you building trust? That's the third step. The fourth step is, on top of this, you need to start bringing your sales process lens, because a lot of times when a company is like 1 million, 2 million ARR, etc., they already have a good lead base, but they're either not nurturing them, following them, tracking them in the right ways, right? So if you don't have a CRM already, you should have already had the CRM. But at the end of the day, you can't expect marketing to generate leads without you converting, without building the learning loops, and also without having a system whereby the leads from 6 months ago coming to your funnel, they're seeing a LinkedIn post, they're seeing you on a podcast or whatever, they're being nurtured, and then your outbound is tracking those signals and making sure they reach back to them at the right moment, because now they're moved from awareness to consideration, maybe, right? And the fifth point is scaling all these 4 points, which is picking your scalable channel. As I said, if it's direct sales, starting to hire your people, but now you have a playbook to give to them. If it is SEO, you have written a lot of content, having them in an organized way in your website, which is then SEO friendly or AEO friendly. Or if you run some ad tests to figure out your message market fit 1 year ago, now starting to pour more money into your ads so it scales. So going from this non-scalable, building the playbook, making sure you have message market fit trust and processes, to now scaling the processes that you have so they don't break.
And how has, I think I really want to circle in on the outbound thing, because I think that that's such a huge pain point for so many people, especially today. There was that moment a couple of years ago where everything was sort of hyper personalized, and then AI has now kind of made almost the volume and that almost too easy that it kind of seems cheap. So, where can AI tools and things slot into outbound and stop it becoming really sort of generic and, dare I kind of say, cheap?
Right.
But yeah, what sort of, how have you noticed that sort of slotting in terms of outbound, both across enterprise that you're working with now, but also, in that kind of 0 to 1 stage as well, what are some of the kind of ways that people can work around making sure that they're not being too generic?
Yeah, the title of that 5-stage loop that I just explained, the slide, is actually before you build your agents, get your essentials in place and build a virtuous
Nice.
loop.
Cool.
And I see a lot of people building agents again, like this very same VP sales who's building an AI tool for DevOps people. So supposedly very knowledgeable about AI, builds agents. And I have these agents on Claude that run, but I'm not getting any results. I'm only getting 2% reply rates on LinkedIn, etc. And then we start looking at things, and we figure out she came saying like Outbound is terrible. I let go of my SDR. And after the diagnostic, we realized the only thing that's actually working is your outbound. So there is some volume, there is some execution rigor. You're getting replies because you're doing it through the founder profiles. So people are replying to you. But what happens after the replies is you book a meeting, you jump into a call, nothing is happening, it's not working, you're being ghosted, etc. And that means then at the root cause, when you're booking those meetings through some wrong method, some wrong reasons, people are taking those calls with you, but either they are not aware of the problem, or they're aware of the problem, but they are not ready to act on that yet. They're not the right persona to reach out to in the first place. They don't have the trust systems that should. So for example, you jump on a call with a DevOps person, they're like, okay, first of all, they put their guards on because they don't want to use the AI tool because they think it might replace them, or it's going to be a lot of change and it's going to be difficult to use, blah, blah. So obviously your marketing didn't do any job in terms of educating them on why this should be something you should consider, right? So there's no LinkedIn post, there's no blog, you haven't targeted them on ads, they haven't seen you, or even more importantly, they haven't heard about you from any of their peers, which is why these referral loops are important, influencers in your industry and whatever. So before you build the agents to do some mass volume spam, what we do at Forte is this whole process is a 16-week system whereby the first 2-3 weeks is really nailing down on your 30 go-to-market essentials. What's the product now? How is it going to evolve in the future? Therefore, what's the persona that you're targeting today with what pain, which is very real. So all these come from like call recordings, talking to the persona, listening to their problems on social listening, using tools like Trigify to do that, or going in Reddit channels, telling your Claude agent to go pick, like getting as much information as possible about the persona and their pains in real words, then starting to do that outbound. When you have and two things that are really important about outbound, I think messaging is important. Everybody works on that and blah, blah. But if you got a right offer and if you're targeting the right people, then you will have a conversation, right? Catching them at the right time is most difficult, which is why I don't believe all these signals like hiring signals, fundraising signals. Yeah, everybody's bombarding people at that same time. What have you done before the hiring, or the fundraising? Like, have they heard of you is really important. That's why I think you need marketing engine. Essential is, it boils down to the essential. So the first 2-3 weeks for me before we launched any outbound, and I started a new sprint with a new fintech founder yesterday, and he was always pushing for, can we also do a bit of email? Can we also do a bit of this, that? And I'm like, we'll do email if you have a warm domain, which you don't have, we need to set it up. Also, if you have warm connections to go after, I use email for generating volume after I have some message market fit. So I was explaining that. At the end of the day, we got to, okay, let's do like 500 LinkedIn messages month one, and then 300 emails, but very targeted, very specific, signal based on whatever. So if you spam the hell out of people without having any of your essentials in place, without building these learning loops, so you're recording calls, you're capturing the aha moments, instead of explaining things the same way every AI writes, like 500 words of BS. Like, you should just cut to chase and say what the pain of the person is in their words. And that only happens when you have a system that builds the essentials in a learning loop.
Do you think a lot of companies are overcomplicating it way too much? Whether it is having far too high a stack of tools, or just their general processes and systems. Do you see that as the kind of root cause, or is that a symptom of something else?
I mean, it changes from company to company, but I think across the board, there are a few patterns I see, which are when something doesn't work, they put more fuel to the fire in the sense of volume. Like, let's increase the volume and let's hope for the best without diagnosing the root cause. So if you've sold to 20 companies through your first networks and some word of mouth, you're not supporting them, that loop in any shape and form. You're not investing into building trust loops. You're not doing inbound led outbound. I think the results will not change, even if you find or you'll grow very slowly, right? So that is the hard work, which a lot of people avoid. So the answer is always get this AI, get this clay, which builds magical workflows to enrich people from 3 sources. Send them this message, they will fall in love with our product. Well, nobody fell in love with your product before. So capturing them at the right time will not change anything, because first of all, you need to figure out who's falling in love with my product. Is that the right person I'm targeting? Do I have the right messaging? Do I have the right packaging? Do I have the right offer? So your outbound will only work as long as those essentials are taken care of. Until then, your outbound is not for volume. That volume will only spam people. Until then, your outbound is feeding your learning engine, which is exactly what we do. In the first 2-3 weeks, we nail the essentials. We start LinkedIn. We book the first meetings. We record those calls. We understand what the buyer resonates with, how they build trust, where do they get their information from, what kind of marketing activity will be relevant for them. So or what kind of product features they need. Therefore, our product agenda changes accordingly, etc. So when you capture those things, you can improve your outbound, you can improve your product, you can improve your marketing, you can put money in the right places. So test with an audience, figure out your message market fit, learn from those calls, start improving everything, including outbound, accordingly.
It's really interesting. I had a conversation with a woman called Liron. She's based over in Seattle. She's she leads CS teams, so customer success.
Yeah.
And she was saying something very similar. And she said, from her point of view, it was the customer success side of things often gets sort of left behind. But she was kind of coming from this angle of that's when the deal really starts, because then suddenly you've got to retain them, and you've got to, as you just said, learn from them, figure out what actually they want from the product and how you can improve for them, and then kind of make adjustments accordingly, and ideally sort of keep them on, because that's what you want to do. But it sounds like what you're saying is actually almost that relationship needs to start before they've even signed on. And I'd be really interested to know, like, it seems like that's a fairly counterintuitive thing. And I imagine something that a lot of companies probably don't really take into account. They just focus so much on getting the deal across the line and then think about it. But actually what you're saying is think about that at the very start. Am I on the right lines there?
Yeah. I think customer success is super important. And like, for example, my previous company, Flola, which is a digital sales platform, we hired a customer success person, commercially savvy customer success person, way before hiring the sales people, because we were still figuring out the sales process, how to shorten the sales cycle, etc. And we wouldn't expect a salesperson to do that for us, which a lot of founders fall into the trap of. Like, they try to outsource their problem, and then the problem just amplifies because the salesperson is not you, the founder. Whatever, that's another thing. But customer success, I used to say, customer success starts from first call. Like, first sales call is actually your discovery call, is a customer success call. And I think a lot of people don't do this enough. So I've been in sales. So I started my career in sales, individual contributor, then became a sales leader, then became a CRO, started managing both customer success, marketing, sales, whatever. Then I built a product. I spoke to 500 salespeople, and there is a huge lack of marketing muscle in salespeople, including myself, which I was. So before becoming a co-founder, I never thought about content, trust, all these things that marketing has to do to build the trust. The base of sales is trust. And you need to build trust. So if your marketing doesn't do all the work of educating people and bringing them to the sales call where they already have a bit of trust, your job on the first call is to build that trust in 30 minutes while you're running a discovery, which is impossible. Like, already when they come into a call with you, They should have a bit of a trust in terms of some FOMO, their peers used you, they heard about you somewhere, they saw your ad somewhere, they saw your whatever somewhere. So the trust is already starting to be built. And the best way to build the trust is after that is to be curious about the person and their problem rather than trying to feature, drop and throw your product at them, which a lot of salespeople, unfortunately, still to this day do. And that is an built-in quality for a good customer success person because they're genuinely interested in the problems of the other, empathetic. Their job is to troubleshoot, problem solve. So I think these are all now very intertwined. Because if you're a salesperson who's thinking, oh, my job on the first call is to just feature drop for 20 minutes, talk without a stop, talk about how great the product is. This is 26. People have done their research on you. If they're on a call with you, chances are they'll know something about you. So your sales hat in that sense should be swapped with maybe a customer success hat. Doing better discovery, being empathetic to the problem, hand-holding them from the first moment.
That all makes sense. But how do for a sales team member listening, or even a sales leader, it sounds like people are being expected to wear more hats than ever, and you're not just expected to be a good salesperson anymore. You also have to be a content creator or marketer, at least. You're expected to be slightly within kind of customer success as well, perhaps even almost have a little hand in RevOps as well. How can people who have just got into it, whether they're just getting, first sort of few years as an IC or even with the point where they're a sales leader, that sounds potentially like it could be quite overwhelming to suddenly have to expect to be aligned and across essentially 4 different departments and valuable. What I guess maybe, AI tools are sort of making that easier, but what's been your experience with working with people, and, is kind of getting overwhelmed by that a very realistic thing, or is it just kind of, sorry, mate, that's the nature of the business now?
When I'm asked these questions, I always have a bit of a hesitation because I only come from my experience, right? Like this
Of
might not
course. Yeah.
be true at all for like a well-established, I don't know, salesperson at Thomson Reuters selling some information report. I don't know if that world still exists because now we can do. But all these big. So there's sales. So I was working with an ad tech company, advertising technology. And they have, people who've been in those jobs forever. They have the relations, like rules don't apply to them. You build a CRM, they don't care. They want marketing to write all of their copy, to do any outbound and blah, blah. So wonderful, great life for them. Like if they can maintain their job in that status quo, great, wonderful. But for the rest of the people who are coming into the workforce today, as you say, I think you're expected to do a bit of all. By the way, I think the rules of the game don't change. Like 10 years ago or today, it's the same. Like any good salesperson should be a people person, understand the pain, resonate with the pain, and hopefully think of their job as a bit of my podcast was called Sales Therapy. So I think the job of a salesperson, maybe it's extreme, but it's a bit of a therapist because you're trying to unbuild the problems, figure out like, what are your KPIs? What's going to get you to your next promotion? What's really bothering you right now, rather than just future drop, right? Like what's the person sitting across from you going through right now, their pains? Do you have the solution for them? Or can you recommend some other solution? Because if you build that kind of trust, 6 months later, they'll come back to you with a bigger deal or in your next job. So that's still the same, like empathetic people person, understanding, diagnosing, etc. Another one is, I think, curiosity. Like if you're in a sales job, I would expect you to be curious about things, about how things are developing, evolving in the world of your buyer or in the broader world. And if you're curious, then you're going to naturally want to discover things. You're naturally going to want to not be left behind. And I always used to say this when I hire people in larger teams, like, see this as a stepping stone in your career. See me, see my business, see my team as a stepping stone in your career, whereby you should learn to the level of abusing your role. Use your role to network, use your role to build your brand, use your role to speak to people outside of your existing workflow to learn things from them. Like really leverage your work and make it work for you and your career and your personal development. If you have that kind of attitude and mindset, I think you can come over that overwhelm.
Yeah, 100%. Our founder at Pitstop, Emmett, he talks a lot about we've just made a new hire, and I actually just had a meeting with him just before this, and we were chatting about it, and we were talking about the culture and stuff, and I sort of said it's solutions, not problems, and it's growth mindset is the word that we've kind of always used, is being free to that, and it's okay to come to something and be like, guys, I don't know how we do this, or that's not going to work. But if you leave it there, then that's a problem.
Oh yeah.
Instead come to it with, guys, this is a problem, we can't do this, but here's something else we could do. Or I just had a conversation with X person and they recommended we do this. And it's been so awesome having that coming from top down. And I don't think it's anyone's fault if, people aren't necessarily expected to arrive with that straight away. I think that a part of that has to come from leadership or, someone else in the team, sales teams, for example, if one person in the team is performing really well, study what they're doing, have a look at how are they how are they converting people? What are they saying in their sales calls? What are they doing that you could be doing better? And I completely agree with you. I think it's so important, and especially when we are in this world of AI tools and being more siloed than ever, remote work. I think it's very easy to forget that there is a human being on the, like right now I'm talking to you before we hit record. We had a bit of a human conversation before getting into this. And I think now that's so easily forgotten.
Yeah. I think one thing you mentioned there is really important, like how do you learn from each other? And now this is something I think the AI and LLM world is trying to solve, like how do you upskill and learn as a team together at the same time? Because we're more siloed than ever, like everyone's using their own Claudes or GPTs and whatever's, and maybe they're parallel processing something. So for example, as of last week, we just maybe even lately finally moved to Claude Team, so that the whole team can, like, all our, basically, like, we have ginormous amounts of N8N integrations so that all our calls are recorded and they are pushed into our Claude learning agents, and they're doing the work, like what are the aha moments, what are the learnings from this call, how could we have done the sales call better, can we create some post from this, and whatever. Like all of that was happening, for example, with my agent or one of my team's agents, and etc. But now we started unifying them and standardizing them, and so it becomes like a whole giant team learning exercise, which is, at the stage of companies that I work with, it's super essential, because the whole thing is about how do you get to revenue faster. And the best way to get to revenue faster is to really have these learning loops, because otherwise it becomes ridiculously overwhelming. Like imagine a salesperson or a founder having 10 calls a day, recording them, putting them to their Claude, hitting like, how do I learn from this call each and every time? Well, instead, you build your agent, you build your N8N flow, and at the end of the week, all the calls are pulled into something. It analyzes it in the way you want. It's not just your calls, but your whole team's calls. And then you have this, like, a pure substance of 3-4 lines you need, because that's the other thing, because the information is so available and so overwhelming, you don't know what is the essential thing. So trying to get from that large base into something substantial, and trying to build that system. And that's the system we've built now for Forte, and we're building for some of our clients too. That's very critical, I think.
You've answered my question before I even got to ask it, which was, how can we kind of, tighten those learning loops and feedback loops, and what can be done? And I think that's a really interesting point, and it's not one that people have mentioned on this before, is that it's amazing having all these tools, but if you're using them independently, they're probably not going to perform anywhere near as well as if you're using them almost as a team. Yeah, that's such a good point.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the work I do is, as I say, early stage founders. So even if you're 500K, 1 million, 2 million, 20 clients, 30, 40, Series A, I used to see this when I used to work in a Series A startup as well. Unifying the learning, unifying the kind of information sharing is going to get you to revenue goals fastest. And the other thing is, like, whereas I was on a roundtable last week with people who are running like 500, 600 people, large sales organizations, like really big, well-established post-IPO, usual legacy businesses, etc. And they have the same problems. Like, how do I make AI work? Which AI workflows? Which tools? The worst thing is that everyone is doing their own thing. How do I unify? So it's a common problem, I think, now as a whole working force of, yes, we have this enormous wealth of information, this marvelous tool, this gem in our hands, but how do we use it to make it useful for us rather than overwhelming and noisy and crappy? Also sameness, because I think AI, unfortunately, has this tendency to converge all of us towards a middle
Towards the
ground.
average. Yeah.
Towards the
average. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's super, super frightening. Because I think everything becomes the same. Like every LinkedIn post starts with most X does what. Now I'm even seeing paid ads, like ads on. Sorry, it's I call it paid ads because of go to market. It's ads. I see ads on my Instagram. They all look the same. Different industries, different sectors, different problems. They all look the same. They all say the same thing with similar language. Super crazy. Super frightening.
I a completely random anecdote, but I was listening to a podcast recently with an actor called Ben Affleck, who's very famous. But he just sold an AI company to Netflix that's going to help them with kind of post production on making films and TV shows and stuff. And this was the analogy he gave on it: is the reason that this AI content that we're seeing now, the reason that it's so crappy, the reason it's so shit, is because it draws everything from the middle, like you said. So you get nothing bad. Nothing is bad, but also nothing is ever really good. Nothing is going to be extraordinary because all it does is pull from the middle. And one thing that he stressed, and obviously he's talking, not talking about GTM, he's talking about creative, but it still resonates, I think, because all these tools do sort of pull from the middle. And actually, like I said, the adverts aren't going to be bad. The content, the copywriting, your LinkedIn posts, they're not going to be shit. People are going to they'll see them and they'll think it's fine. But nothing you say nothing it creates is truly going to really resonate. It still needs to come from, this is going to sound corny. It's going to sound corny. Like, it still needs to come from your heart or your head. Like it needs to come from that human experience. And then you can use AI to refine it. You can put it through a tool, or you can have a tool that helps you figure out what you said wrong in the last one that's going to help you make it better this time around. But it has to come from something organic in the first place. Otherwise, you're always just going to sit on the average. And that was something I found really interesting. And it's cool that you've said it as well.
Yeah. Our average connection rate on LinkedIn when we use a founder to do go-to-market for them, etc., it's around 30, 40%. And reply rates are generally between, 10 to 15%, and interest is between 5% or so. So from there, you can do the calculation. Like, you book in a healthy early stage go-to-market organization, one SDR should be booking maybe like 3, 4, 5 meetings a week, sales qualified leads. So I explain this because since launching Forte as a growth advisory for a year, I've never done any outbound for myself. It's always been inbound referrals, people who know me, we work with them, etc. But now the agency is growing, I'm hiring people, and I'm thinking, okay, let's start doing a bit of outbound to see outside of my current, network. Mm-hmm. Who else do I work with? Who else can I help? What do they pay for this? What kind of product do they want? And blah, blah. So I did an experiment 2 weeks ago. I asked my SDR to do some LinkedIn outbound for me. We sent to 50 people. We only got 2 replies.
No way.
And I'm like, this is the worst result we've ever gotten in our history. And that's for ourselves. Okay. And then I realized there's like a lot of positioning thing because I work as a fractional for somebody. I do an agency work for others, blah, blah. So there's a bit of positioning thing. But then I sat down and wrote the copy. Basically, I said, it's quite a long message, but you're a founder. Here are the three things that I see with over 100 startups I've been working with and blah, blah. And obviously my career and profile is there. And I'm like, does this resonate with you? And suddenly we start getting like 3, 4, 5 bookings from that because it is real, written in my language and no BS. I mean, I don't pitch normally, so there's no pitch in it, but it's a genuine conversation. And so I have a lead magnet called 13 Systems of Why a B2B Revenue Engine Doesn't Work in the Early Date Stage, blah, blah, long name. But these are the 13 symptoms people come to me with over the last 1 year or so. Whenever they come to me, they say one of these things. We start exploring the root cause. The root cause is one of these 1, 2, 3 things. I put that in a message. I say 3 things I see. People are interested because it's genuine and real. It's not some AI written BS, right? So where does this leave us? Like, how do you scale with this kind of, like, you can't be genuine and creative and innovative all the time. At the same time, you shouldn't be too uniform and standardized. It's a difficult problem to solve.
Yeah. And if I'm honest, I think it's one that it's a fairly new problem. So I don't think the solution has revealed itself yet. This idea of like, we don't want to finding the happy medium between being authentic and organic while also getting the appropriate volume to make sure that you're being kind of successful. I think it's going to be a really interesting couple of years. One final question, Alper. This is something we ask to everyone, and I know it's a difficult one because something that you've kind of stressed throughout the conversation is there's no kind of one size fits all. But in your experience of advising and working with all these startups, is there kind of one place where you see sort of execution or performance kind of breaking down? Is there one sort of pattern that you've noticed? Whether it's an example for that from previous ones is the sales leaders themselves haven't been given enough kind of leadership training, so they're not able to effectively empower their teams. That was one that a couple of people have kind of given. But is there one, whether it's that or another example that one sort of place where you found execution tends to kind of break down across organizations?
There's so many I could tell from my old world of running larger sales teams, but maybe I'll share from my rather recent work of working with earlier stage startups.
Sure.
I think moving from founder-led sales to repeatable sales engine is super difficult. Mm-hmm. And I think it applies to a CRO who is expected to build, go from Series A to Series B, which is now you have 5 salespeople, you depend on their performance. Now you need to unify everything, create a process that people can adhere to, but at the same time bring their authentic self and like make the conversation more genuine rather than just following a discovery script, etc. I think the place where things always break is when it goes from a top performer doing great job, whether it's a founder or a revenue leader or like first 2 AEs who are doing amazing jobs and whatever, to then, okay, how do you make other people perform as well as those top performers? This is where I think it breaks for everybody, the most difficult place. I would say this is in my current world, this is what I see the most. And when it applies to like bigger organizations, it's always, and I used to hear this a lot in my podcast, again, from CROs who are running like big 300, 400 people, large teams and whatever. And that's always, how do you move a mid performer to a top performer? So it's now a stage ahead. You've hired these people, but you have a lot of mid performers or even bottom level, I guess they will need to exit at some point, but mid performance to top performance. So then they bring the processes, the learnings, the whatevers. But it's always, how do you replicate the success of an individual or a group of individuals and try to bring the rest of the organization to the same level as these people so that as a team we can perform better? And that's super difficult, and that's where everything breaks. But did I answer your question or did I just create?
No, that was perfect.
Okay.
Yeah. I think
I feel like I was supposed to give an answer like, this is what you do.
I think that's the beauty of podcasts. Like this is, and I've always said that this is a conversation, not an interview. You know, I don't, giving definitive answers is people, it can be useful, but ultimately one of the accidental theme of this conversation is like, we've all got to focus a bit more on being human, I think. And I think it certainly does resonate. And it's something that people have said before, is this idea of, you know, sales teams always having to rely on their hero, and what happens when you remove that hero and suddenly that goes. So yeah, 100% Alper. I think, it's definitely something that a lot of people have come across with. This has been awesome, Alper. I think, I could sit here for another few hours, and we'll definitely have to do round two. Where can people go if they want to find out more about what you get up to?
Sure. LinkedIn is where they find me usually. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm sure you'll share, and they can go to our website. They can see our fascinating testimonials of our work we do with our customers, or some of the workshops I run. I do a lot of keynote speeches here and there, and I have a lot of free ebooks, lead magnets, and whatnot on my website, which can help them from, you know, hiring checklists to running outbound to building a go-to-market strategy that scales to your first 2 million ARR. They can find all that information on my website, fortegrowth.co.
Love it. Alper, thank you very much for sharing all your insights with us. Everyone listening, thank you. Hope you've enjoyed it, and we will see you all for the next one.
Thank you, Sandy.